Hi friends, welcome back to Becca's Garden and Pepper Pantry. The other day we were making Bokashi, a homemade fertilizer from fermented milk and rice water that we fermented a few days ahead of time into a SCOBY and a fermented little natural wild yeasty mix. So it's super warm here in our house. It's about 80 degrees, 79 degrees in South Texas. Now what would normally take a couple of days, around 3 to 5 days-ish, to ferment the milk that we put in, a gallon each the other night, it did it in 24 hours. In fact, I went to the doctor's this morning and we had to stick it in some bowls because it was starting to bubble up, and it's making that farmer's cheese. Now, I'm no farmer's cheese expert. We are making Bokashi fertilizer, so if it tastes terrible, toss it in your compost. Don't even worry about eating it. Milk is not that expensive when you're just buying some cheap milk. But as you can see, it did bubble up and it got a little crazy. So what we're going to be doing is adding 2 teaspoons of some salt, whatever, kosher salt, sea salt, whatever salt you like. I've got some salt here. This is just a basic sea salt from HEB. We're going to do 2 teaspoons per 1 gallon of farmer's cheese. And I'm not crazy about the top. As you can see, it's got some, like, almost like some of the dye from the cotton cloth. So I'm actually, and I'm going to show you that I believe this is partly also some of that rice yeast. So I'm just going to scoop that off and toss that in my compost. So I don't want that in my farmer's cheese. I think that actually made it taste a little weird last batch. So we're going to just cut that part off. And I've got a compost bowl over here on the side. Alright, I think a little piece fell in, so I'm just gonna grab that one. Alright, so I've got like a strainer bowl colander here with some, this is a potato sackcloth that's from Walmart. They come in some packages. Here's just another big stainless steel bowl. Everything is nice and clean, and I'm going to try and not make a huge mess here and pour this off and strain it. So I'm just going to set my salt aside, see if I don't make a mess here. Oh, it's heavy. So you can see the curds and the whey have separated. You have a clear fermented whey liquid at the bottom, and then this is your farmer's cheese at the top. So, let's see how this plops out. Chug, chug, chug. Kind of wiggle, jiggle it around a little bit, help it strain out a little faster maybe. Just try and lift it up a little bit, help gravity help it along. So you want to save all of this fermented whey. That is what we're going to be using for our Bokashi. That is our plant fertilizer for fruit trees, regular plants, vegetable gardens, whatever you have growing. This helps save you guys some money and add some beneficial bacteria back into the soil and helps feed your plants. Now, if you saw the first video, you know that we need some light brown sugar. And you could just store this as is and maybe put a little bit of molasses in it or a little bit of sugar and store it in your fridge. We always have a full fridge. So we're going to super saturate it with some light brown sugar until we can't add any more. And then that shelf stabilizes it and preserves it naturally so that you can just keep it and use it 1 tablespoon at a time to 2 gallons of water and fertilize your plants. This clearly is going to take a little while. Alright, so I will set this in another bowl. Look at this. And show you we have this really pretty fermented whey here. So, let me just rinse my hands a little bit. It's gonna smell slightly soured because it's fermented. And like I said, for each 1 gallon, you're probably going to need 2 packages, which I believe, so 2 pounds of brown sugar. You're probably going to need 2 packages per 1 gallon that you're using. I'm going to put this whole, I already know I'm going to be using at least the 2 pounds, so I'm just going to pour that whole bag in. And we're just going to stir it. So we're dissolving the brown sugar into the fermented whey. This will keep feeding the ferment. And when you put enough sugar, it super saturates it so that it slows down that fermentation and preserves it. Alright, so that's pretty much dissolved there. I'm going to go for bag number 2. We're looking for like a syrupy kind of consistency. So let's stir that second bag of 2 pounds of light brown sugar. You kind of want to add the sugar until it stops dissolving, and you can tell that as you keep stirring it, it makes more of a thicker and thicker syrup. And then it should get to the point where the sugar falls on top and barely sinks down into it, and it stops dissolving. So then you know you're done, and you can just bottle it up in your rinsed out, cleaned out with some soapy water jugs, or another jug, maybe a little bit sturdier plastic. These are getting thinner and thinner all the time, so you might want a thicker plastic jug, just because those have a tendency to deteriorate over time and they can start leaking. So I try to put it in a thicker bottle. So we're still dissolving that sugar. We're not heating this up. This is room temperature. I'm just checking to see that it's dissolving that sugar. So we are needing more sugar. It's not at the stage it needs to be at just yet. Alright, so here's my other 2 pound bag. I'm going to add about half of it. So we did 5 pounds of sugar so far. Alright, I don't know if you just saw that. That brown sugar was just barely falling in. Let me just tilt you down. see the consistency we're looking for. Keep stirring and getting that dissolved in. You can store this in glass mason jars. I might just store it back in the glass jar that I fermented it in, but I'll wash it out first. So here we're getting into more of that syrup consistency here. We're almost there. So I used to just do this until I put enough sugar in, and I totally didn't realize how much sugar it does take. So I'm actually measuring this time. I usually just keep going and going and not keep track. But we'll keep track today, so we know what the recipe does and how much it costs. So, alright. Definitely, let's watch that sugar start to sit on top. See how it's starting to just barely sink in? We're getting there. You could add molasses. Molasses does cost more, even in bulk. So, like I said, this is going to be the cheapest way to make bokashi. Was, you know, your cheap whole milk from wherever you can source it, and your cheapest light brown sugar, and a little bit of just fermented rice water. Oh, we're getting there. See the colors turning a nice darker brown caramel color. We're getting there. Alright, so I'm going to add the rest. So that was a total of 3 of these light brown 2-pound bags. So that's 6 pounds of sugar. It's just now starting to kind of sit on top and barely sink in. That's what you want. Dissolve all that sugar. Probably could add a little bit more. Bowl here. I'm going to weigh it out so I know how much extra I'm adding. I just grabbed another 1/2 pound, so we're at 6.5 pounds of light brown sugar to 1 gallon of milk bokashi, so that we can super saturate this. Alright, we're at 7 pounds of brown sugar now. And I think that's probably gonna do it. Oh yeah, there's the dark color I was looking for. We went from like a light golden to a light caramel to almost a molasses color. And that's pretty much where I'm gonna stay at. I can still feel a little bit of granules at the bottom, so it needs to finish dissolving this. And since it's not really dissolving a whole lot more brown sugar, I'm going to say that's good. If you notice that this is starting to ferment in any way a little bit more than just being a really slow ferment, and you're going to want to add a little more brown sugar to it over time to just help keep slowing down that fermentation process. I think I've done that a little. I mean, I didn't have to add a whole lot over time, but this, like I said, this will stay at room temperature and slightly keep fermenting. And I've never had it really ever bubble over. I just kind of check on it like once a week, once every 2 weeks, just to see if it's doing any kind of activity. You could store it outside in your garage, out of the sunlight. You can store it in the house in a cool, dark place. I've never had any problems with it, storing it outside in a cool, dark place in the garage. I just made sure I had extra room in whatever thick plastic container I was storing it in. That way, if it was fermenting and bubbling up some more, it had that space. Yep, that looks pretty good, y'all. Let's see, I've got a little bit more of this whey that's coming out of the cheese as it's been sitting here over the strainer. There's probably a little bit more going to be coming out. So I'm just going to keep squeezing it to get that whey out. Looks pretty good. I'm going to swap this out over here. Push that back. Show you we're still working on the farmer's cheese. So we want to get out as much of that whey as possible. And you're going to salt your cheese. 2 teaspoons for this batch per this 1 gallon of whole milk. And then we're gonna keep it in a cheesecloth, straining some more overnight in our fridge. And that way, by tomorrow, we will have, hopefully, some nice farmer's cheese for salads or whatever. Now, if you've over-fermented your cheese and it smells way more sour than you want to even deal with eating or anything like that, just keep making sure that you strain out all your whey, save your whey, super saturate it with your brown sugar, and you can toss this into your compost. Don't even worry about it. If you think it smells weird, it's just going to be something that was fermented for a lot longer and a lot more sour. So if you don't like the taste of it, don't worry about it. It's just something that is still a good whey product for your bokashi. So we're still squeezing. I like these potato sacks because they have a much finer what do you call it? I don't know, just the cheesecloth. This will squeeze through your cheesecloth and make a big mess. And you'll have to have several layers of your cheesecloth, whereas just one potato sack cloth that's 100% cotton is plenty. And you can see I'm squeezing pretty hard, and I don't have anything coming out except for the whey. So all that cheese is still in there. And the salt will help expel any extra whey out of your farm cheese overnight. I think we're getting there. There's all that really good whey. I'm just going to put that in this batch. And if you feel like you need some more brown sugar, no problem. Just add a little bit more. So, I've gotten as much as I can squeeze out of my farmer's cheese of the whey at the moment. Just going to open this up. And I'm going to add my salt. So there it is. It's a nice kind of crumbly consistency. It'll make more of a cheese ball the tighter you can tie it up together and have it stay that way overnight. So like I said, 2 teaspoons of whatever good salt you have. And I'm just gonna mix that in and hope for the best. Like I said, I think I probably over fermented my other batches and it tasted just weird to us, so we gave it to our chickens. You don't want to give it to your worm composter bin because salt can kill your worms, but if you wanted to, before you added any salt, and you could give this to your worms. I know people say don't put dairy, but you can a little bit if you mix it in with some greens and some browns. So just no salt. Alright, so here we are. Give it another spin around. And since pure salt's not really good for your plants, Epsom salt is. Anything that I'm squeezing out of this right now, or that's going to come out of my farmer's cheese overnight, I will just dump down the drain. That's not going to go back in my Bokashi, and not going to actually go in my compost. I try not to keep anything salted in my compost, or anything that's like heavily salted. So, squeezy, squeezy. Set that aside. And just bring this. We added some more whey to this. So let's just kind of see what it looks like. I still feel some sugar at the bottom. That was at the bottom. So it's looking like it's super saturated enough that it's not really dissolving too much more. Even though we added that extra whey that we just squeezed out. 7 pounds looks like that is the magic number of light brown sugar to 1 gallon. Got this container here. wash this container out really quick and see how far it fills that 1 gallon back up. To show you, you're probably going to need some extra storage. Alright, so here's our 1 gallon glass mason jar. We'll see how far it fills it up. This is so heavy. So heavy. Alright. Go slow. And I would fill it to just there. So we still have a good amount, maybe 1/3 of a gallon left in my bowl. So I'll put some in this container. And if you see brown sugar at the bottom, don't worry about it. Just add it to the next batch that you're going to be mixing up. Not a problem. So there's a little bit of brown sugar left. Let it go through here. You can plop some in there and it's all fine. Right. So yeah, we didn't get whatever that is. Whatever's left at the bottom. Looks like, I don't know. What is that? Maybe a quart. So 1 gallon and a quart is about what I got. I'm going to take care of the next batch over here and figure out where I'm going to put it, because it looks like I've run out of some space. And I might be low on brown sugar, so I'm going to go see if we can go get some brown sugar so I can finish this next batch off. Thanks for hanging out with me today in my kitchen, making some homemade, fabulous Bokashi fertilizer for your garden, plants, fruit trees, and all the things. Like I said, all you need is a tablespoon to 2 gallons of water in your pitcher, and after your plants are established, they will love it. Just as things start to yellow out a little bit in your plants, you can, about every 2 to 4 weeks, add some. If you've got really little baby seedlings, I would only add maybe like a teaspoon to 2 gallons of water. And then that way they just get that extra little bit of boost to just start growing and looking great. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you like, share, and subscribe with somebody who is a gardener enthusiast, growing their own food in their backyard and doing what they can and enjoying this fabulous hobby. We'll see you guys next time in the next video. Take care and God bless. Bye.